Yes, I begin by just explaining that probably it is very evident that Australian politics is moving towards a narrative or purported narrative of redistribution of wealth. And that's categorically very evident, as opposed to a government that generally and at large supports the idea of wealth creation, or I'll probably use the terminology a bit more capitalistic. Um, Now, I'm not qualified to make comments on politics, despite some of my influences are on social media, but I'll begin by describing perhaps the application of some of the common structures, such as discretionary trusts, that are customarily used to hold long-term and growth assets, and exactly how they are affected. And then I would begin by explaining the budget by touching on this issue, Derek. So, discretionary trusts are not dead. They were conventionally and historically used as a vehicle to income split, and most particularly incomes that relate to business profits or earnings on investments income. Now, what the government proposes essentially, they are saying that you've got to pay us 30% tax, and you no longer are able to split an income between the member of your family, including your spouse and children, who would significantly benefit from a lower marginal tax rate. So you or the ultimate beneficiary of the trustee are out to pay at least 30% tax on those earnings. Now, if you sort of look at this context and the application of these issues in and with relation to income splitting with our doctors, generally our doctors earn personal service business or personal service income, PSI, PSB. So the issue of income splitting or alienated income was always not a thing that they could do, because it is about them and the clinic, and largely during their time in medicine, unless and until they're undertaking an element of business profits, such as owning a clinic. As a sole practitioner or a sole practitioner generally working in different settings, their income would have largely remained within themselves or a structure that's really closely held. So conventionally, when the clients would have come to us and said, "Oh, well, I earn this much money and I operate my business out of a trust, and I could give some money to my children," so that will be affected a little bit. But the fundamental question we have to ask ourselves is that were you even, or are you even permitted to income split? However, this issue applies to perhaps some small business owners that they operate their businesses out of a discretionary trust. So they will no longer have the benefit to be able to redistribute business profits as effective as they used to. However, the trusts remain extremely prudent structure for isolating litigation risk. They remain an effective structure to hold assets, and the trusts continue to enjoy the same benefits of the capital gains tax that an individual would.
Right. So what I'm hearing, there's not a lot of change in regards to the way we would structure our clients. Like there's been talks about, changing from a discretionary trust to maybe a unit trust or a fixed trust along those lines. So how do you view that in that sense? Do we need to make certain changes for our clients going forward?
Probably not very large. Again, the primarily our corporate clients and business operations, they were originally and from inception they were held in a unit trust structures, or perhaps sometimes a format of a hybrid trust, and purposely that mechanism is done in order for the clients to have part exit or full exit out of the businesses. So that won't really change. With relation to our clients who earn active income under a format of a company or a structure, that won't be affected. At any given time, the lowest marginal rate would have remained about 30%, which is the company tax rate. And it really won't affect them in any way at all. So long as the issue of them earning some active income under the current format won't really change. Now, different story with relation to the clients who've got investment income being earned in a trust. So we no longer have the ability, or from 1 July 2028, we won't have the ability to be able to redistribute that as tax effective as we could have in and amongst the family members. So we just really have to analyze now that the proposed changes, and with relation to the trust, will it force a lot of trustees to force sell assets and no longer hold in a trust? There is a whole lot of complications around the transfer fees and and whether it's worthwhile for them to actually salvage a really good investments in a trust. So as I said, government has moved policies to be able to tax the asset rich or people who have the ability to create and accumulate wealth in the format that's described. But in saying that, first of all, a lot of these existing assets are grandfathered within the trust. So if somebody had a $50 million farm, that would give them a $5 million dividend. That's really unaffected. So the change is coming in from 1 July 2028 and giving a little bit of a perhaps time for small businesses to restructure themselves. But those are small businesses, really, our doctors don't fall into that category. They were, they generally, a sole practitioner does not generate business profit as such. They generate personal income exertion, which to begin with, they weren't really able to split that income as aggressively as probably described or practiced by some practitioners out there.
Thanks, BJ. And I think the other thing we need to also remember is the trust also acts as a protection mechanism as well. So it's not really just the tax that we look at, it's the rationale behind setting up the trust potentially could be for the asset protection piece. That won't change, will it?
No, that won't change. The asset protection piece, isolation of the litigation risk, and most importantly, intergenerational wealth transfer. Trust remains an extremely effective facility for a lot of our clients to hold assets and be able to pass those assets on to the children without necessarily changing the initial format or having to deal with the issues of state and transfers in that fashion. So several generations of a family could hold an asset in the same trust and then continue to take control of it without necessarily selling down or changing the form of that asset. So that remains to be a very relevant and effective strategy for a lot of our clients or a lot of wealthy people.
Thanks, BJ. And then just on that,